My name is Troy Podell. I'm our district's coordinator of career readiness. I'm responsible for all the memes that you've seen up around school about this, in addition to the announcements, etc., because I feel like it should be fun, and why not, right? If I'm in education and working with students, you guys make sure I have a good time, I make sure you have a good time, and we all learn something out of it. I've been teaching in the district for 6 years. I was a teacher at the STEM Academy, teaching social studies. Last year, I was the K-12 social studies curriculum leader for the district. So I do a lot of work with the West faculty. I also student taught here in the fall of 2010 with Mr. Hancock, teaching 12th grade civics and government. So very fond of this building particularly, very fond of the students here, and the caliber of student that we have. So I'm really excited to debut Lunch and Learn here. Right? It's kind of a homecoming for me, and a homecoming for our guest, Mr. Kagel. This program is the start of a lot of other efforts in this district to help better prepare students for the world of work. Right? For forever and a day, the Downingtown Area School District has been aligned toward college preparation for students, right? And it's not that we're abandoning that by any stretch of the imagination, but we're starting to consider how do we serve human beings who come into our care at the age of 5 and then nominally leave our care at the age of 18. But you're always like, welcome to come back. How do we serve you over the course of your lifetime? How do we prepare you for a changing world that is constantly changing? How do we help you as best we can? Right? So it's really a student-centered approach. We think about, how do we help you be a self-sufficient human being that is living a life that you believe is meaningful, right? And that you believe is well-rounded, and that you are feeling a sense of accomplishment and, like I said, meaning from your vocation. Right? So we decided it was a good idea to start bringing folks in from the community to give you a preview of what they do for a living, what their career journeys have been like, because how you get to where you are is often an inspiring or unconventional story. There are as many career stories as there are people in careers, right? So we want to give you that, and we want to give you the opportunity to ask questions and figure some stuff out. Some quick facts for you. 80% of bachelor's degree holders are working in unrelated career fields. Broadcasting major. Okay? Class of 2006, go Temple Owls. 75% of bachelor's degree holders will never work a day in the career field that they majored in. Right? Now, I spent 2 years selling advertising for CBS Radio in Philly, so I fit in that like sort of 5% crossover. But most of my friends that had broadcasting degrees never spent a day working in the field. Right? They're doing other things. One of them is a manager at Boeing. Another one is an English teacher in New York. It runs the gamut. Right? So even if you pursue a bachelor's degree at the next level or a master's degree, et cetera, there's no guarantee that you're going to stay in that field forever. The days of our parents and grandparents where they one firm for 40 years and then they retire, those are kind of over, right? People tend to think of their careers in 3 to 5 year chunks now. So, I want to help prepare you for that reality, if that makes sense. So the district created my position to help do that as a coordinator of career readiness. Okay? I want you guys to view me as a resource, somebody that you can reach out to for help with internships or job placement or really any sort of questions or concerns you have about the world of work, and somebody that provides meaningful programming like this one. So I want to thank you for being the first to experience this. Okay? I want to introduce you to Mr. Robert Kagel, who is the administrator for Chester County. Bobby, I don't know that I could do your story justice as well as you do it. So I'm going to take a seat with these folks, and I want to cede the floor to you. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Troy. And good morning, everybody. It's still it's snowing pretty good out there. I woke up this morning and was kind of hoping I was gonna have a snow day, but didn't quite happen. as Troy said, I'm Bobby Kagel. I'm the county administrator. When I say I'm the county administrator, a lot of people kind of gloss over and don't have a clue what that is. And I've been in the position now for, I guess actually the beginning of December will be 3 months I'm in this position. And essentially, I'm the highest non-elected official in county government. And we'll talk about what county government is and does and everything in a minute. But a little bit about my backstory. Not from Chester County, born and raised in the Bronx, up in New York. I was, I went through the New York City public school education system up until I was 13. And my experience in the New York City public school system was I showed up to class, I was a well-behaved kid, I did my homework when I was supposed to, I didn't cause problems in school, and that meant I got A's all the time. Then we moved here. My dad's job brought us to Chester County. He worked for the post office. Job relocated us here, and actually ended up in the Downingtown school system, and graduated from this very school in 1998, back when it was one high school serving the entire district, and found myself to be challenged educationally a lot more than I was in the New York City public school system. Kind of not surprising. So I graduated in 1998. I'm going to kind of jump around here. I have spent my entire career in public safety emergency services. So in New York, my dad volunteered on an ambulance in New York City.
If I can have your attention real quickly. I just got off the phone and we are going to be working on a 2-hour early dismissal here today. 2-hour early dismissal with everybody being dismissed at 12:40. Teachers, please check your email. Dr. Bell has just sent out an updated schedule for what our remaining periods will look like for the rest of the day. We will be eliminating a period, and the times for the end of each period are posted on the email. Currently, we're at fourth period, and fourth period will end at 10:55.
Okay.
Again, dismissing at 12:40, and all evening events are canceled. Thank you very much.
So that cuts us a little bit shorter. We've got about 20 minutes remaining, right? Something like that, which is okay. Bobby?
So I'll put this into fast forward, and the other piece that I will say is, at some point I may need to take a phone call because the superintendent gets to decide when the schools close. I get to decide when the county closes. So we generally we listen to what a lot of the schools are doing, and depending on that, excuse me, I may have to close county government, which will be entertaining. Anyway, so I spent my entire career in public safety. I have been with county government for the last 16 years of my career. My dad volunteered on an ambulance in New York. The first thing when we moved to Pennsylvania was he wanted to find the local ambulance company and joined Euclid Ambulance and volunteered there. And so watching that, kind of growing up in New York, my career aspiration was I wanted to be, this is weird. I wanted to be a rabbi, an emergency room doctor, and a forensic pathologist, all at the same time. That was my career aspiration. Didn't hit any of that. And it's a fascinating story. So went to school here, graduated in 1998, had kind of given up on, had changed from those career aspirations, and I was torn between becoming a nurse, because I really enjoyed the healthcare field. I volunteered on the same ambulance that my dad did. So I was torn between becoming a nurse or going into computer science. And was talking to some friends, and they said, oh, you really like computers. You ought to go do computer science. Okay. And so I graduated Downingtown in 1998, and I went to Westchester University for 3 days. And after the third day, I was sitting in a history class, and I said, yeah, not for me, not for me. And withdrew and went to work. I started working full-time in emergency services. I worked for a private ambulance company and then started working as a firefighter and EMT throughout the county at different fire stations. And I will tell you, my parents were devastated, absolutely devastated. I actually specifically remember being at the ambulance company and telling my dad that I was dropping out of college, that I wasn't doing it. And he had only ever gotten his associate's degree. And we had a huge fight, but I promised him at some point, I'm gonna go back. Just wasn't the right fit for me at the time. So I worked for a period of about 4 years, till I was 22, kind of working in fire stations throughout the county. And it just so happened that I was at fire station Minquist Fire Company, back when they were on Route 30, where Estrella is now. And I was volunteering there, and somebody who worked for the county I was working there, and somebody who worked for the county volunteered there, and he came in and he said, hey, we're creating this position at the county, you ought to put in for it. And the job posting, I saw the job posting, and it required an associate's degree. I didn't have any college. I wasn't going to apply. And he encouraged me to apply regardless, and I applied. And one of the things I learned is they always, most of the time, they put a college degree or equivalent experience. And well, I fell into that equivalent experience. And so I got hired with the county. And it's interesting hearing that most folks will switch jobs every 3 to 5 years now. When I look back on my career, the reality is that roughly about every 4 years, I changed positions within the county. So I started as a quality analyst, and my job as a quality analyst was really doing some data analysis and setting up some reporting systems for fire stations and ambulance companies that were required. And then after that, I became the assistant director for quality. And the way it's kind of funny how I got that position was my boss at the time, the guy who hired me, wasn't going to, or he had taken a new position within the organization, and I wasn't going to put in for the job. There was a division of 3 of us. One of the other guys had been there a couple of years longer than I was, and I figured, it's his turn. It's his turn, his opportunity, and I wasn't going to do anything. I wasn't going to apply for it. And we were out to lunch one day, and he had made a comment about a county policy, and I realized he didn't get the bigger picture. And to me, that's a big part of it. And so put in for it, and I got that position, and then moved in to be the deputy director for emergency management. So I was responsible for all of the, basically all of our disaster preparedness efforts in the county. Responded to the Nickel Mines Amish school shooting. I'm sure everybody remembers the Valentine's, that February ice storm where 90% of the county was without power for a week, had schools closed, everything was closed. I was responsible for managing the county's response to that emergency. I ended up, kind of became the face of the county with all sorts of different news outlets. And then our director of emergency services suddenly passed away. And I went through the interview process and was offered to become the director of emergency services. And that's about every 4 years I jumped positions within the same organization. And then the gentleman who was the chief operating officer for the county retired, and I interviewed, and now here I am. And I'm responsible for all of county government. To kind of go back to the education piece. So at the time, the county had a program through Delaware County Community College where the county would actually pay for employees to get their associate's degree. Came too expensive, and we just can't offer that anymore, so we don't. But I got my associate's degree in emergency management and planning, and then realized, if I want to go any further, I'm going to need at least a bachelor's degree. And I started looking, and I thought, well, I'm working full time. Most of the time, I actually was holding down two full-time jobs. I was doing the county, and then also still working as a firefighter and EMT throughout the county. And so I ended up doing an online program through California University of Pennsylvania. And I had a choice. They had, at the time, they had two programs that I could choose from. One was kinesiology, and the other was legal studies. And I figured, well, legal studies is a little more closely aligned to what I'm interested in. So I went with legal studies. And that's kind of my career path. Now I'm responsible for 56 departments, a budget of $465 million, plus an additional capital budget of roughly $30 million a year. We're responsible for services, everything from the county's library system to the county's nursing home to our health department, our 911 system, the county prison, our entire Department of Human Services, whether it's aging, children, youth, and family, mental health, intellectual, developmental disabilities, our county youth center, basically the entire range of county government I'm responsible for. That's it in a nutshell. So I'm happy to answer any other question or answer any questions. I can babble on for more if you want.
Question.
Yeah.
So, like you said, like when you went to Westchester, like so, like you said it really wasn't for you.
Yeah.
Like what made you kind of realize that? I guess?
It's a good question. It wasn't what I wanted to be doing with my time. I was sitting there, and and I'm sure it's got to be 10 times more now than when I went through high school. But high school's intense. It's a lot of studying. It's a lot of reading. It's a lot of writing. It's a lot of thinking. And when I graduated, I was kind of done with that. I was at a point of, I don't want to write another paper. I don't want to read another book. I'm happy to read a book that it's a book that I want to read, not because I have to, not because I need to read a textbook or read another chapter or memorize another fact or learn whatever it might be. And so I was sitting in class, and I was thinking to myself, this isn't where I want to be spending my time. To me, my passion, my love was in the back of an ambulance or in the back of a fire truck. And that's where I wanted to be putting my effort and my energy. And I didn't want to be sitting in a classroom trying to go through that again. It's a good question.
Do you think you would have been able to acquire the position you're in without your degree?
No.
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 You don't think you could have made your way up through and then still without the experience?
I guess I was quick to say no. Here's my take on college degrees, and recognizing it's going to go on YouTube and everything else. I'm going to be honest here. I look at a bachelor's degree as sometimes you need a piece of paper. Sometimes you need, that piece of paper simply gives you some credibility. And for me, I had, and I guess it's different in my view. It's different if you're coming right out of high school and you don't have work experience, you don't have work history. That piece of paper is important, right? It gives credibility to employers in terms of these are my capabilities. I've got critical thinking skills, et cetera, et cetera. But if you have any kind of substantive work experience behind you, that piece of paper, in my opinion, becomes less and less valuable. When I went through my bachelor's program, yeah, I learned some interesting things about legal studies, about the law. But when I look at the skills that I learned as a result of going through that bachelor's program, didn't make me any more capable of doing my job. But I think for an employer to hire somebody into as public of a role and as important of a role that I'm in now, I think without that piece of paper, it would have been pretty challenging. The job I'm in actually requires a master's degree. It's a master's degree or equivalent experience. And I've got the equivalent experience, but I'm not entirely convinced that I would have been able to reach this level without the piece of paper.
Well, and to your point, what you've noted anecdotally, Bobby, the scholarship backs it up. There's an economist at George Mason University, Dr. Brian Kaplan, who's done extensive research on this. 70% of the return on investment for a college education comes in the final year. And so what they call that is the sheepskin effect. The fact that you have the degree communicates to employers a host of things about you, that you're capable of reading and writing at that level, that you're relatively pliable to do what they ask you to do, you can delay gratification and set long-term goals, and you'll show up to work on time, essentially, right? And that's what that credential can do for you, right? So it's not that it isn't valuable, but to your point, if in your case, you approached college from a different perspective than most 18-year-olds do, right? It's a tool that helps you realize something. It's not an end in and of itself.
Yeah.
Right.
Any other questions? And that's not, it's not to bash college. I think college has a place. And, I'm often asked whether I regret any of the decisions I've made in my life. The answer unequivocally is no, because I firmly believe I wouldn't be where I am today had I not taken the path I took. But not going to college, there are...
All TCH students are to report to the cafeteria during 5th, 6th, and 7th periods today. Again, all TCHS students are to report to the cafeteria during 5th, 6th, and 7th periods.
So do we think that means that they also are doing an early dismissal, or... waiting for my phone to ring. But at the same time, my wife went through. My wife went to college right out of school, and she has some, and other folks I know that went to college right out of school. They have experiences that I don't necessarily have. I don't have the experience of living in a dorm. When I went to Westchester, I was a commuter student. So I don't have the experiences of living in a dorm or going through Greek life, whether that's good or bad, and I don't have those lifelong friendships that my wife has from folks that she built those relationships with in school, and so I think the decision of whether to go to college needs to be a very personal one, and I think the answer always doesn't need to be go to college. sometimes it's graduating, go get a job. There are incredible jobs throughout this county. Interestingly enough, we actually have more open jobs than we have unemployed people in the county. And incredible jobs, in manufacturing and opportunities to make a lot of money and do a lot of great things without a college degree. And
So regrettably, that's our abbreviated time. If we could thank Mr. Kagel. There should be in all of your email inboxes a message from me that I sent out this morning. If you please kindly just do what the message asks you to do, hold on to that artifact. It'll help us later on. You guys remember the portfolio from last year, right? So I'm in charge of that stuff now. So stay tuned. It'll be a lot easier and a lot more simple than it was last year. But I need to dot some I's and cross some T's on it. Guys, thank you so much. Really, you guys are awesome. And any help that we can be. Okay.
thanks, everybody.